Okie dokie, artichoke. We are here live with the expert, Aleks, the Hebrew Hammer Salkin. Dude, are you not blown away by these new introduction videos?
I'm really enjoying it. I was just telling you before the show started, I was doing a chat with my friend Eduardo, whom you've had on the Pat Flynn Show a few times. And he had an intro too. And I was like, man, like this is like I don't know if it's as exclusive to StreamYard, what we're using now for the chat, or if it's or what the deal is, but it seems like it just enhances everything. The only thing that needs to change is I need to find you a better photo for future collaborations.
Yeah, not too happy with that avatar, which means which means I'm going to keep using it.
Right, exactly. I should
because I know it triggers you. We're going to make it even bigger. I'm going to use it in episodes where you're not even here. Okay, so real quickly, welcome, gentle listeners. We are going to talk about why we get fat and what to do about it. Aleks and I were just running a module, a training for our Strong On certification. We've been doing it online this year, and we spent a lesson on this issue, like what is going on with obesity? What are the primary causal factors in obesity? What does the research say? Separating myth from fact. And then, even more importantly, like what can we do about it? What can we do about it individually? What can we do about it as coaches? Are all diets the same? Do all diets fail? Do all diets not fail, but it kind of doesn't make a difference which diet you use? Or are some strategies really better than others? Stay tuned, my friends, because we are going to answer those questions for you and more here on the Pat Flynn Show. So if you're tuning in, do us a favor, because we are live streaming. Let us know where you are tuning in from in the comments. Give us a like, give us a share, give us a subscribe, give us a bell ring, give us all the things that you can possibly give us. We want to thank Aleks for taking the time to be here on this lovely Saturday morning. So before we dive in, good sir, how are you and how has your week been?
I'm kicking butt, but I'll do better. My week has been very good.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. All right. So, before we, so we're going to talk about two things. One, why has America had this struggle with obesity? Especially since like the 1970s on. Talk about like what are the primary causal influences there, and then we'll focus more on strategies. Like what are some really good, effective, research-based, evidence-based things we can do that seem to really make a difference. So we're gonna talk about that. It's gonna be fun, and then if we can take some questions along the way or at the end, we will do so. So please chime in. Hey, maybe we should just give a little personal background. Aleks, I think you grew up kind of a skinny kid. That wasn't the case for me, man. I grew up a chubby wubby wumpkin, and so like I get it. Like I've been on the other side, and people are sometimes surprised to hear that. But it's true. I grew up in a house. In fact, not all, but a lot of my family are not only obese, but I have a number of people in my family that are morbidly obese. So I've kind of got like the environmental genetics set up. And then there was the lifestyle factors. Like I never knew about healthy eating growing up. Like it was just never discussed. And I had the type of household that was pretty much completely libertarian with respect to food. In fact, my friends you would have loved it, Aleks, if we were friends when you were younger. We had what was called the cabinet, jokingly, we call it the cabinet of diabetes, because all my friends would love to come to my house after school because we just had this cabinet that it was free reign, right? Like you could just take anything you wanted from the cabinet, fruit by the foot, Gushers, fruit roll-ups, Hot Pockets, all the like worst breakfast cereals you can imagine, soda, like not a single thing in there that wasn't like hyper palatable. And so this was my life from like elementary to early high school. Like after school, I would come in from the bus stop, go straight to the cabinet of diabetes and put on Dragon Ball Z and just have, it was a good time. Don't get me wrong. Like, oh my God, like we had a lot of fun.
I wasn't even there and I'm reminiscing about it.
It was the party house, right? But I got fat. I got significantly fat. And, it was one of those things where, I still had a lot of friends, but like I was a chubby kid in the group and I got picked on, and eventually that got really old and annoying. And I decided I needed to do something about it. And I did. And it took me a while to figure things out. And I had a bunch of good coaches. But what I'm saying is I get it. I've been there. I understand the struggle of weight loss. I understand the struggle of all the information overload of like, this guy's telling me to do this thing, that guy and that girl's telling me to do another thing. They seem to be opposites. Help me. Help me. What do I do? Right? So that's, hopefully we can shed some insight there. So what are your opening thoughts on this, good sir?
Well, I never really had to deal with obesity when I was younger. Like you mentioned, I was always pretty skinny. Basically, everyone in my family was pretty much the same. I mean, there were certain people in like my extended family who were, maybe weighed a little bit more, but I wouldn't say they were like fat or obese or anything like that. So in a way, it's harder for me to identify with it because I never really went through a period in my life where that was an issue. I had the reverse issue, is that I was always very skinny and, I was kind of frail and all this other stuff. And so, I think you and I kind of met in the middle in a way because, you were on one end of the spectrum and I was on the other. And now we're totally jacked and beefy.
Diabolically huge.
Correct. Exactly. As all of the very generous YouTube commenters would no doubt agree on any of our videos together.
No doubt. Let's get some love from the comments. Ray says, "Hail from Delavan, Wisconsin. Good morning to two of my favorite fitness coaching heroes. Salute, my brother." Hey, you're from Delavan? I grew up in Delafield, Wisconsin. That's kind of the same. Francis checking in from Ottawa, Canada, just finishing the Hobgoblin workout. Cheers to you, Francis. Salute. And we have Against Fascists in the comments. Good day, good sir. So Aleks and I are fighting obesity on the show, and we got people fighting fascism in the comments. So a lot of wars going on here. Welcome, everybody. We appreciate having you. Please hit the like and subscribe. And we're going to dive in, and we'll take some questions as we move along. So I want to summarize some of the points we talked about at our certification training lesson today of why we get fat in the first place. Like what are the major causal factors in the obesity epidemic? And here I'm going to be borrowing kind of a summary of research from a friend of mine, Brad Dieter. He's a very important contemporary researcher into weight loss and obesity. And he summarized the causal factors very well. So I'm just going to borrow quickly from him. When I build the show notes to this page, I'll have, resources and footnotes and links over there. But for now, we're just going to kind of storm through the points very quickly. So let me go through these 5 different things, and then Aleks and I will kind of jam on them quick. And Aleks, I want to get some of your thoughts. So the first one, and the first 2 are going to be exceedingly obvious, but just bear with us because I think it is important to understand. The first one is that, since the sort of like 1970s on, our food environment has changed pretty drastically, and it's changed in terms of the amount of overall calories consumed. And this is really important, right? Because it's not like we can't really identify any one macronutrient as the enemy, because sometimes we see like we can see sugar going down, but calories still going up. So it really does seem like the culprit here is just overall increased intake. Like we're just eating more, and we have been eating more for a long time. And this is so again, very obvious, but this is one of the primary causal factors in the sort of contemporary obesity struggle that our society is facing. We're just eating a whole lot more. That's one. So we're eating more. But the second is we're also moving and exercising a lot less. So there's changes to our eating environment, but there's also changes to our movement environment. And we don't just mean like less people are going to the gym and working out, but we mean just the kind of nature of work in society has also shifted pretty drastically from the 1970s. Like people nowadays are doing more work like Aleks and I do, which is like sitting down behind a computer. Just the types of work people do these days is just less physically active, less physically demanding. It's less getting out and working with your hands and standing and moving a lot of the day. It's a lot more sitting at a computer, sedentary type of work. And so what we've seen is that our society has consumed a lot more, and also our society is moving, not just exercising, but moving a lot less. And a lot of that has to do with changes in the work environment. So we have changes in our eating environment, and we have changes in our movement environment. These are going to be 2 of the most significant and also most obvious reasons why we have this sort of contemporary obesity crisis. All right, so those are 2, but there's 3 other ones that I think are worth pointing out. Now, these ones we might not have as much control over, and they're not necessarily bad in and of themselves either, but they have been identified as causal factors for why we have this obesity situation. Number one is our population has just gotten older, right? I think it was, since the 1970s, our average population age has increased by 10 years. That's significant because with an older population, you're going to have more time for people to gain weight and all that. So that is one thing, an important thing we have to consider. Number two is increase, which would actually be number four in our overall points, increased pharmaceutical use. And a big one here seems to be the use of antidepressants and how those can sometimes lead to weight gain as well. Now, again, like I say, these aren't bad things. Like, it's not a bad thing that people are living longer and people are older. It's not a bad thing that you have new pharmaceuticals and medicines that serve a lot of really good purposes. So I'm not saying we should shorten people's lives or get rid of medicines and antidepressants. No, it's just these are things that that factor into the explanatory story of why people are generally higher when we look at BMI now than before, right? And if you guys want, we can talk about BMI and its reliability. I think BMI, even though it can be off on particular instances, is still a good general tool for the population in terms of like capturing the things we want to capture. Obviously, if you're doing a BMI on somebody who's just ridiculously jacked and huge and lean like Aleks and myself, it's going to be a little off. But again, in the general population, that isn't the major thing or most common thing going on. So even if a tool can be like not great on certain particular instances, it can still be a good tool generally. And that's what I would say about BMI. And then the last one, and this is another one that's kind of a good one, but it does factor into the explanatory story, is people are smoking less. Right. And Brad talked about this. He summarized these points in a recent Facebook post I thought was really good. I'll try and link that in the comments. But as it happens, so great, smoking less. Awesome. That's what we want. Smoking bad. However, what we find is that when people smoke less, they tend to compensate and they tend to eat more. So as people smoke less, they also tend to gain weight. So it is something, again, that factors into that explanatory story. So those are the 5 things that seem to really help make sense of why we have this obesity crisis. Changes in our eating environment, changes in our movement environment, older population, increased pharmaceutical use, less smoking. Are there other factors? Yes, of course. We're not saying this is an exclusive list. We're saying that these play a significant role in the explanatory story, and they're worth being familiar with. Aleks, your thoughts?
I agree.
Great. End of episode. Yeah, I mean, just build on any of those points that you want while I kind of skim the comments here.
Yeah, one of the things that occurred to me even recently, I don't really have any goals for myself for fat loss, and the majority of the people who come to me don't either. Or if they do, they don't come to me for that. They come to me for like strength training, movement, becoming more resilient, that sort of a thing. But one of the things that I've noticed in myself over the last couple of years is that I have been walking less and less. And part of it is, so for instance, when I lived abroad, I walked a minimum of 4 miles a day on average. And then when I lived in Pennsylvania, I would still walk quite a bit because, like when life got stressful, I would just go out for a walk and I would get some stress relief from that. And then since I have moved to Omaha, for instance, I just walk less because fewer things are within walking distance. I just have to drive to more places to get things that I need. And I still try to make it a regular part of my life, but I have noticed that my weight has gone up, and not necessarily in a really bad way, but my weight has gone up in proportion to that. Now, I was recently out of town, and I walked like a minimum of an hour a day, usually closer to like an hour and 15, hour and 30 minutes. And I was eating less too. I was only because, I was not able to prepare as much food. So I had to, go out to eat, and I just didn't want to spend a ton of money. So I would only eat maybe like twice a day. And then when I got back, I found that I had dropped probably 5 pounds. Now, and here's the other thing is I was definitely sleeping more hours. Now, I don't restrict my sleep, but it's not uncommon for me to only get maybe like 7 hours a night, which I think is like the minimum of really what people need. Whereas I was getting closer to like 8 hours when I was there. So I was doing, and Dan John wrote about this recently in his Wandering Weights weekly newsletter, and about the importance of sleep, movement, and food for fat loss. And so for me, it was interesting because it's not even really my goal, but just by pure happenstance, by getting more of those things in, by getting in more walking, better sleeping, and less frequent eating, I lost weight relatively quickly, and it wasn't by doing any super hard exercise program. It wasn't some super restrictive diet. It was just some really basic stuff. And this is obviously an N=1 example, but I do think that it is pretty salient for most people because it is a lot simpler than I think most people will make it out to be.
Well, it goes to point 2, right? The changes in our movement environment.
Yeah.
And I want to say more about that as we move on. We have a comment here from Ray. He says, amazing how much just walking does for body comp. Amen. Hallelujah, brother. Spot on. Jeff Hemingway. Hello to our good friend Jeff Hemingway. Says, hello, handsome swell.
I like I got to say, I like his getup in the picture he's got there.
At least somebody's paying attention. All right, a few more comments, and we're going to keep on. Bridget says, checking in from Annapolis, Maryland here. I just fell upon this and can't stay for live, but I want to encourage women nearing menopause and those who coach them to look carefully at hormonal influence in obesity and weight management. Calories in versus calories out is not the entire story. If you're looking at research with subjects who are males in their 20s, it's not going to be applicable to 50-year-old women. First off, I agree, right? So the calories, we'll talk about this more as we move on like these different points, but there's this weird thing with calories in, calories out, right? Is that there's kind of like one extreme where people just want to deny that it's any part of the story. And then there's another part of the extreme where people want to say that it is the entire story. And I resist both of those, right? It's like, no, it's part of the story and it's an important part, but it's not the entire story, right? We have to consider both the quantitative and the qualitative. And Alan Aragon had a good quote of this just recently. He said, if when you're thinking about diet and you only think about the quantitative aspects, the calories or the macros, but you don't think about the actual types of foods you're eating, it's like thinking that exercise success comes down to thinking about like intensity, duration, volume, frequency, but you don't pay any attention to exercise selection, what you're actually doing. And that's obviously very foolish. It's a both and. And when it comes to trying to hit certain targets and macros or calories, the types of stuff you eat is going to bear a significant influence on how you feel, your mood, your cravings, all of that. Like we know, as we'll talk about here as we move along, hyper palatable foods, like, we've got a bag of potato chips up there that are like lime flavored potato chips. Pat Flynn doesn't eat just one of those, right? Like those should not be in my house. I don't know why they're in my house, right? But that's like, talk about changes in food environment. That should not be in the food environment. And I don't know what kind of level of discipline you would have to be able to like have a certain macro target and have that in your diet and not be significantly challenged because of the hyper palatable nature of those foods. So it's a really important point. What we should say is, yes, this is part of the story. It's an important part, but there's more to the story. What is the rest of the story? And so I resist these. Like simple is good. I'm a big fan of simple. We're minimalists. Simple with training, simple with nutrition, but simplistic is the mark of an idiot. We don't want simplistic. Is that right, Aleks? What else is the mark of an idiot?
I think not having the right headgear certainly plays a big role in it.
I completely agree with that assessment.
Yeah, but I think it's absolutely correct what you said. It's weird because people have, I don't know that you really see this as much in exercise. You do see it, but in nutrition in particular, that nutrition seems to really draw the emotions out of people. And so people get emotionally attached to a certain way of eating, which makes sense. I mean, like we attach food to our emotions. We have cake at birthday parties and other celebratory events. So like that connection is always going to be there. But even when it comes to like certain styles of eating or certain philosophies of eating, people get very, very attached to it. Like I used to know a guy who was like really into keto. And like if anybody questioned it, he would get like viscerally, like he had to hold himself back from getting angry. That might have been from the lack of carbs. I don't know. But he would get really mad. And, people have a hard time accepting the fact that nutrition is really a very individualized thing, and that it's not something you can overly simplify. Like you have to have some level of nuance to it. And, it just seems like it's very hard for people to hear that. So like you said, the calories don't matter versus calories are the only thing that matters. The truth is the less inflammatory, option somewhere in the middle. But people seem to like to go toward one or the other.
100%, brother.
Yeah. It's hard to talk them off that ledge.
As a general strategy for psychological health, try not to wrap your entire identity into a nutritional strategy. It tends to create a not very productive mindset. Let's just say that. Okay. All right. So we talked about what are some of the causal factors. Now, what are some of the strategies that we can use? And in fact, one of the comments here is, how do you start on a weight loss routine that doesn't make you feel absolutely tapped out? And that is a fantastic comment, and what we're going to talk about now. So what we just talked about in our kind of certification course, we'll summarize the points now, are strategies that really stand out in the research. So sometimes you hear like overly, again, simplistic lines like, all diets suck, no diets work, or all diets are the same. And that's just not true. Some things in the research really have a much more profound and obvious effect on both initial and sustainable weight loss and maintaining healthy body composition. And I want to present these strategies to you, and they are strategies. Aleks, can you move your mic back a little bit? I think we're catching an echo. They are strategies. Yeah. Perfect. Couldn't be better. And they're strategies because they're kind of like general guidelines or boundaries. And the way I like to think about it is, as long as you stay within these boundaries, there's a lot of room to experiment and use personal preference and different specific protocols. But if you go beyond the boundaries, well, then you're being something of a pioneer. And what do we say about pioneers? Well, there's two things that could be true of pioneers. One is that they come back with some great treasure that nobody has discovered before, but that's pretty rare. Mostly pioneers come back with their back full of arrows. So if you want to be a pioneer, you can. But I want to set the boundaries and say, like, these are things that we know work really well. They're well researched. I've been using them for many, many years for myself and clients with tremendous success and different variations. So let's get those out there. Okay, what's the first one? The first one is a focus on increasing protein, right? And like I said, I'll have links and references in the show notes, but I'm going to quote one study right now, which says this. A number of studies have suggested that protein is the most, this was, I'll link this in the show notes for you guys who want to read the full study. But this study says a number of studies have suggested that protein is the most important macronutrient mediating satiety and leads to increased weight loss with retention of lean body mass. Like that's the goal. That's the holy grail, right? Like we want to retain lean muscle. We want to lose weight loss. And it's saying protein is the most important thing for that. So single meals with increased protein to carbohydrate ratios have also been shown to increase satiety and decrease food intake, resulting in both improved weight loss and improved maintenance of weight loss. Continuing on, now meal replacement strategies, which we'll talk about in just a second, simplifies the weight loss regimen by replacing 1 or 2 meals a day with a defined nutrient and calorie content. Meal replacement leads to increased weight losses over 12 weeks compared to simply restricting favorite food intakes, and weight losses have been maintained for up to 5 years. So I'm talking about 2 different strategies here, and both of these have been borne out in the research again and again. 1, get protein up. 2, consider using strategic meal replacements, which we've talked about on the podcast many times. Now, a friend of mine, Dr. Spencer Nadolski, he's been on the show before. I've done work with him in the past. He's an obesity medicine specialist, and he's the one that really helped me to appreciate both the science and the practicality of strategic meal replacements. In the literature, it's sometimes called partial meal replacement therapy or strategic meal replacement therapy, but it really just means having a protein shake. Like ultimately, at the end of the day, that's what that means. And the reason this strategy works so well, I'll just summarize the quick points, is 1, it helps us achieve the other point we just talked about, which is really important, which is getting protein up. When you get protein up, magic happens, right? We increase satiety, hunger goes down, cravings go down. We help to preserve lean muscle mass. It's more metabolically expensive, right? So protein is a winner, right? We want to get protein up, preferably lean protein. Now, where do we want that to be? Well, there's ranges. Generally, I recommend, and I think this is a general safe recommendation, is somewhere between 0.5 grams to 1 gram per pound of body weight per day. 0.5 to 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight a day, or at least lean body weight per day. I think that's like a good general success range. And one of the best ways to hit that is with the use of strategic meal replacements. And again, I'll put links to studies in there which show how effective this can be. That shows that not all dietary strategies are the same. These are ones that really stand out as being effective both for initial weight loss, robust initial weight loss at times, and sustained weight loss. So a meal replacement shake, very simple, right? It's a high quality protein shake. Put in some fruits and vegetables, fresh or frozen, maybe some healthy fats, maybe some extra fiber. Why would this work? Why is this effective? It's effective because it helps you get protein up. We know that's important. We can get a good amount of kind of micronutrient intake as well. Also important, like fruits, vegetables. We all know that's good stuff. So it packs a lot of nutrient content for a controlled number of calories. So even if you like load this thing with like whey protein and strawberries and vegetables, it's going to be hard to get a considerably high calorie count in that. So it's going to be nutrient dense, relatively low in calories compared to other things that you can eat. And here's another important thing, and this is more psychological, but I think it can't be overlooked when it comes to dieting. It's simple and convenient. One of the reasons that I think is often underappreciated when it comes to nutrition success or success in anything is there's too many unnecessary barriers to entry. Things are too complicated. Things are too expensive. Things take too much time. Well, a protein shake is not complicated. It's not expensive. It doesn't take a lot of time. It's a simple rule. It's convenient. And it works. So how you implement that is kind of up to you and your goals or the goals of your client. It could be as simple as replacing breakfast with a protein shake or just making breakfast a protein shake. If you want to be a little bit more aggressive, you could do breakfast and lunch. Or if you want to be less aggressive, you could just toss in the occasional meal replacement every now and then. So what this does is it helps to just take out or reduce calories throughout the week at certain parts of your diet, get protein up, boost satiety, and probably help you get more fruits, vegetables, and fiber intake. It's just such an easy way to win. And I've personally, this was a big game changer for me. In high school, I started doing protein shakes. Like this was the thing that really started me to help. I would just have it for breakfast before school. I would usually take one to school with me. And I've been using this strategy literally ever since. It's been many years now. And so it's very sustainable, works. I've used it with tons of my clients. People sometimes resist it first because they're like, oh, you should just eat real foods. Well, what do you think's in the shake? Protein is good. We know the whey protein is a perfectly fine thing to eat. Fruits, vegetables, maybe some almond butter, some healthy, what is not to like about that? So sometimes there's a lot of whining that goes on about this. That's just kind of irrelevant. But Aleks, I'm sorry, I've been ranting for a while. I should let you chime in at this point.
No, I like what you've been saying. I have to say I have not really done much with the shakes, although it's something I've been considering for myself lately, just purely out of curiosity, because I've taken a few of them just like now and again. And it seems to me like, even though I like the people who would say, oh, just eat real food or what have you, it's like they're not wrong. But I think the subtext of what they're saying is that, oh, it's not natural to like liquefy your calories and then drink them. But there are a lot of things that we do nowadays that we just never did in the past. And so why not take advantage of some of these?
Right. But I will insist that to some extent they are wrong, because we have the comparisons of different strategies in the literature, and the shakes and the meal replacements often outperform.
And that's that's what I mean. That's what I mean. I think that I think that they are not looking at the fact that these shakes outperform some of the other strategies. They're looking at like, oh, well, our ancestors wouldn't have carried around shakes to eat with them, or they wouldn't have carried around shakes with them to eat or consume throughout the day. So I don't think they really are saying that, but it seems to be like that the appeal to that would ultimately break down to it is that like, oh, it's just not natural, or it seems like a short-term solution. When, like you pointed out, you've been doing it since high school and it's worked like phenomenally well for you.
Dude, so, I like literally I just started by taking my mom's slim fasts. Like my mom had slim fasts that she never drank because just something that happened in our house.
Yeah.
And I was like super like trying to be healthy, and I didn't really know better. And I just, so like I like stumbled into this strategy without really thinking about it. And then as I tried to, learn and research more, I realized, oh wow, this is actually something that's been studied and shown to be very effective. And I think it's for all those reasons I outlined. Yes, you get protein up. Yes, you can get other important nutrients, and you get fiber up and satiety and this or that, but it helps to control calories in a way that is simple, convenient, and relatively inexpensive. And you can't underestimate how important those factors are when it comes to the weight loss process. People are busy, they're stressed, they're tight on time, money. They need simple things. So yes, okay, you could grill a salmon for breakfast and lay it out on a perfect bed of organic arugula and dust it with some extra virgin olive oil. Like, if you have the time for that, God bless you. Like, honestly, like, fantastic. I don't have the time for that. So I'm just gonna make a shake quick, right?
Yeah.
Justin says, wrong comment. Sorry, going up. He says, I have definitely found that after losing a lot of weight, my relationship with food changed. Eating is far less enjoyable and feels more like a sort of a chore. It's tough to not accidentally fast. Yeah, certainly that's true for me and a lot of people, is that sort of your palate changes especially if you stop eating the hyper palatable foods, like more bland foods actually become tastier. Like now I genuinely enjoy, like, one of my favorite things. I bug my wife to include it with like more dinners than not. Is just a steamed broccoli with the garlic. And I just put a little bit of salt on that. And if you were to tell me that I would ever enjoy eating that 15 years ago, I don't know what I would have said, but I wouldn't have believed you. But so you develop these kind of more subtle tastes. Your just relationship with food change, and you're right, it becomes easier because you get into a habit. Like anything else, these things are habits. Most of our life is just sort of the sum of our habits. So we replace old habits with better habits. And for me now, fasting when I first started was a challenge. Now it's very easy. I'm just working on my coffee here. I'll have some protein after this, and I wouldn't say eating's a chore for me, but what I eat and the relationship with my food is definitely significantly different now than it was when I was, like 15 years ago, for example, even 10 years ago. Okay. So, all right. So the 2 points, strategies that work, get protein up, consider using some degree of meal replacement strategies. Let's continue on. There's three others here, 3 other things that you want to focus on. The next one is very important. There's been some new research on this that is very interesting, and that is that you should vary your dieting intensity throughout the week. This is a theme we've harped on before, but I want to press it again. It's obvious with exercise, right? We know with exercise that we don't want every workout to be the most intense, take no prisoners, balls to the wall, thrashing that we could possibly withstand physically, because we know we're going to break down. We know we're going to tap out. We know we're probably going to get injured. That's just not smart. So in exercise, we learn to wave the load. We learn to periodize. But for some reason, people don't apply this concept to nutrition. And they think, if I'm going to diet, I'm going to move in a straight line. I'm just going to keep calories cut and low perpetually forever. And then they crash and burn, and they get tapped out, right? They get exhausted, and they experience metabolic downshifting, and then it becomes harder and harder as they go along. So rather, the sensible thing to do, and what the research has been confirming, is you want to incorporate some type of cycle of cyclical intensity into your diet. Now, again, how you do it is kind of up to you. You could use intermittent fasting. You could use strategic meal replacements. You could use a combination of those. You could do calorie cycles. You could do carb cycles. One recent study that came out, I'll link it in the show notes, actually found that they compared 2 groups. One group just did straight calorie restriction through the entire week. I think it was like a 25% reduction through the entire week. And they did another group which had 5 days of more intense calorie restriction. I think it was 35% reduction, but then 2 days where they boosted the calories, and they went at least back up to maintenance. They might have gone a little bit further. And what they found was that both groups lost weight, but the group that had the cyclical approach, that had the 2 strategic refeed days back to back, preserved more lean muscle mass and resting metabolic rate. Right. So they didn't seem to lose. They preserved more muscle, and they didn't seem to experience the same type of metabolic downshifting that the group that just took the, I guess, traditional linear approach with dieting found. And again, this is kind of like perennial wisdom of people who incorporate the calorie swings or refeeds. But it's good to see that the new research is confirming this. So the point being is, not every day should be the same in terms of dieting intensities. And there might even be a particular benefit to having 2 days, 2 consecutive days, which is recent study shows. In fact, I will just link it right in the show notes right now because I still have it pulled up. So if anyone wants to check it out, it's coming in the comments, coming in hot right there. 2 consecutive days where you boost the calories. So that's the other thing. And this goes to the question we had before in terms of how do you diet without getting burned out or it just becoming exceedingly tedious or avoiding quote unquote starvation mode. Now, starvation mode is kind of like true and false. It's a complicated thing. It is true if you restrict for long enough and hard enough, you will experience metabolic downshifts and compensations, and it will become harder and harder to lose weight. And one thing that you often see with that is a decrease in what's called NEAT, non-exercise aerobic activity. So your body will start to compensate in all sorts of interesting ways. You'll stop fidgeting as much. You'll stop tapping your feet as much. You'll start having that very bubbly and joyful demeanor that Aleks and I have, right? And that means like, look, you're struggling. You're struggling, dude. So it might be worth the occasional strategic refeed there. And we say strategic refeed, and I say that instead of cheat day because it's like, I don't know. Sometimes people, I think, get weird over things you don't like. I don't care if you call it a cheat day, but it's not really cheating if it's part of the plan. And also, I don't want you to think like this is just going completely buck wild either. Like you're still like, sure, you can have some pizza or a burger and enjoy yourself. I think it's important to have that, to ease restrictions generally and still have a life. But it shouldn't be some just crazy binge or anything like that. That wouldn't be ideal. So it's a strategic easing of restrictions, boosting calories, carbohydrates, that sort of thing. And there's good research to back that up. Aleks, any thoughts on that?
I think you covered it pretty well right there. Okay.
2 more things very quickly. Food quality matters. We already talked about that, right? It's not just the quantitative, but the qualitative. Focus, as Alan Aragon said very brilliantly, I think the other day, like, just focusing on calories and macros without quality of food is like just focusing on exercise variables without exercise selection. It makes no sense. Exercise selection makes a big difference in the types of results you get in an exercise program. The types of foods you eat also make a big difference of whether or not you'll be able to hit certain macro targets and the success you will have in a nutrition program. So focus less, get away from the hyper palatable foods. Now, it's not just like that sugar is the enemy. In fact, if you've ever just like eaten sugar cubes, like, who just craves sugar cubes? Like, it's not sugar by itself. Generally, that's the issue. The hyper palatable foods are the foods that come with the slogans that you can't eat just one, right? It's the greasy, salty, fatty, and sweet stuff that just, triggers all those reward centers in your brain. And you literally just can't eat just that one. That we all know what a hyper palatable food is when we taste it, right? Limit or even eliminate that stuff, right? At least limit it, right? And focus on the foods that are nutrient dense, the lean proteins, the quality fruits, the vegetables, the healthy fats. Eat like an adult, as Dan John says. And then finally, the last point, and the reason this is the last point is not because it isn't important, but because I think it is important to have priority, is exercise, and especially resistance training. If you want a healthy body composition, if you want lean body mass, if you want to kind of burn more calories automatically, follow a good generalist training program. We know that resistance training, trying to build strength and lean muscle, helps boost the metabolism, keeps you healthy in the long run. As we age, one of the most important things is retaining lean muscle. Nothing is better for that than just good old-fashioned strength, resistance, hypertrophy training. So do your strength work, do your metabolic conditioning, and do tons of walking, and understand that in combination with the other strategies, you're going to have a very effective way to lose weight in a robust way initially, but also sustainably over the long term. What questions, folks? We're live streaming, so we're going to turn to comments and questions here soon. So if you have anything for us, please drop it in the comments. If nothing else, it'd be good to hear where you're tuning in from. Let us know what you're drinking, what you think of Aleks. So yeah, dude. Before we go to comments, I feel bad. I feel like I invited you on as a guest, and I sort of dominated the microphone here. So,
well, you should feel bad. You should think on your sins.
So say some words.
Well, here are a few words that I am saying right now. Well, first and foremost, I have to say, I mean, between the two of us, you definitely know a lot more about nutrition. So I'm learning a lot just by listening in. So don't feel too bad. I mean, number one, this is your show. This is your live stream. So
It's called the Pat Flynn Show for a reason. The very humbly and originally named Pat Flynn Show.
Correct. No, actually, I'm learning a lot from this too, because I think that nutrition is something where, like, on a personal level, I understand it to a certain degree, but what you've laid out, I think, is it's a very refreshing way of looking at it, because, like I mentioned earlier, like the dietary world seems to be so steeped in emotions that people have a hard time stepping away from those things and saying, let's take a look at what works for most people most of the time and start there, rather than looking at one of the extremes and saying, let's put all our chips in there and see how that works. And so I like some of the stuff that you've been covering. And again, it's just kind of solidified my decision to start investing in some quality protein and other supplements for shakes. Somebody asked, actually, this was Against Fascist. He says, what's the best whey protein to buy?
Do you want me to answer that?
I do.
Actually. I don't think that there's a best. I think generally, I like minimalist, so less is more for me. Just a decent quality whey that fits your budget. I don't think you can really go wrong with that. If you want some brands that I recommend, I like my friend Mike Matthews with Legion. Check out legionathletics.com. I think he puts out a great product. It's reasonably priced and it tastes really good. So, some room for preferences of taste there. Also, I use Terra's Whey. I think they're a Wisconsin company. And honestly, they're just at my local grocery store. So I would avoid any hype that there's any like special magic protein formula out there. In terms of what we're talking about, just something basic would be totally fine. So yeah, kind of whatever you prefer. Aleks, you did say something important, and I want to build on it a little bit. Is I've given these kind of boundaries and strategies. I think if you stay within there, you're going to have success. But I also want to emphasize there's a lot of room for play and experimentation and reflection on experience that you can use and stay within those boundaries. So, I didn't. You made some remarks about keto and stuff like that, and I agree. Like sometimes people's mentality around nutrition just gets very bizarre. But look, like if I have nothing against keto, like if you're, and I have many clients that like thrive on that, and we stay within the boundaries I'm talking about, and they just do awesome and phenomenal. So I'm going to support that. And I do support that. I have other clients where like keto it isn't for them, right? Like they really struggle with it, but they do really well eating more plant-based and with a higher carbohydrate. But again, we stay within the boundaries that I've outlined here, and they have great success with that approach. So what we've outlined here is not only demonstrated to be effective, but it gives a lot of room for, like you said, personalization, where we don't have to like condemn any approach absolutely outright. And we can acknowledge like, oh, great, you're having success with that. Awesome. I bet it to some degree is already incorporating the principles we talked about. And now we can refine it. We can support it in this or that. So if you're coming in and you're like, hey, I'm doing keto, I'm getting great results, I'm going to say, that's awesome. That's great. But what I'm not going to do is say that everybody must do keto or everybody must go vegan or everybody must use the Mediterranean diet, because that just doesn't seem right to me. Good stuff. All right, let's start going through some comments here. Bridget says, thanks guys. Yes to focusing on non-inflammatory foods. I will come back and watch later this evening. Well, cheers to you, Bridget. I hope you enjoy the rest of the presentation. Justin says, going too far and too fast with kettlebells was my mistake. Dislocated shoulder during Turkish get-ups with too heavy weight. Oh man, I'm sorry to hear that. Took 9 months to get back to almost normal. Really threw off my groove. Yeah, hey, let me just say, I appreciate how sad training injuries can make you. Fortunately, I never had anything that has set me back for like more than a year, but I had a pretty bad hamstring injury. I had awful elbow tendonitis. I get it, man. Like training injuries can be super depressing, especially if you're already in a groove. So I wish you a speedy recovery and be careful with the heavy get-ups. Dan, John, and I have said that the super heavy get-ups, oftentimes I don't think the juice is worth the squeeze. Relatively get-ups good, but people start doing like circus trick level stuff with get-ups, and I just don't think that it is always a wise training move because stuff like this happens. So, Aleks, I don't know if you had anything you wanted to add to that.
Yeah, I think when it comes to the get-up, obviously it's very good for the shoulder, but it's not the only thing that's good for the shoulder. So I think throwing in other movements that help to strengthen your shoulders in a wide variety of angles might help, so that in the future, when you are working on get-ups, you are not as likely. I mean, obviously the technique's a part of it, so I mean, we can't overlook that. But things like face pulls, band pull aparts, and just full range of motion movements like push-ups, military presses, things of that nature, will go a long way to helping you to make sure your shoulders are strong and stable. But yeah, by all means, make sure you're using good technique. And with get-ups, I mean, like, I rarely ever did them heavier than 32 kilos. And on a whim, many years ago, I was just like, let me see if I can do one of the beast. And I could. And the point here is that you don't necessarily have to go super heavy with the get-ups to get good at them. You just have to have very good technique, and you put in the work. Same with almost any other exercise. And the heavy weight will be there. But don't push it, because as you found, hilarity will not ensue.
I think it's a good idea. This would make a good topic for a future episode, to kind of identify beforehand what would be strong enough for you, because it's so easy to get carried away in the moment. You know what I mean? Or even like as you move through a program. So having like kind of floors and ceilings for your training program, right? Like I should at least be above the floor, but I don't need to go above the ceiling, right?
Yeah.
Something to reflect on, gentle listeners. Grant says, "What do you think creatine is usually currently losing weight?" I don't know if I understand how that's phrased. "Lost a lot and want to increase strength and have more energy for workouts. I'm 36 and will be starting Kettlebell 1 on Monday." Well, first off, Grant, cheers, my friend, as you begin Kettlebell 1. We just released Kettlebell 3, well, for pre-order anyway. So we have the full, Aleks, now check it out, man. We got the full original Kettlebell trilogy. Kettlebell 1, 2, and 3.
I like it.
Yeah, isn't that sweet? I'll talk a little bit more about that at the end. So, yeah, creatine. What do I think about creatine? It's fine. It's well researched. It's definitely been shown to be safe. So there's a lot of myths about creatine that have just been exploded. Creatine is going to help you with certain efforts within a particular kind of range. So it might help you get an extra rep or two here, which can certainly help with laying down some more strength and muscle. So it's definitely not negligible. It's one of those supplements that has been shown to not only be safe, but to be a difference maker. Will help with weight loss. I think it could help in an indirect way, right? By helping you put down more strength and muscle and whatever metabolic benefits that may have. But it may come with some retention, some water retention and stuff like that. So that is something to consider as well. So yeah, creatine's, I don't take creatine personally. I took it back in high school and early college, and I noticed an increase from it in performance, but I just got to a point pretty early on where I'm just like, I just don't need it. Aleks, you're juicing, right?
Yeah, steroids, straight up.
Vitamin S.
That's right. Lots of vitamin S.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, actually, I've used creatine as well, but I didn't even think I even remember the last time I used it. But like you said, it's like the single most researched supplement. So we already know
it's obnoxiously researched.
Yeah. So there's really no question about its efficacy, what it's good for, what it can and can't do for you. So if it fits your goals, I would say use it. We have an interesting comment from Randy Green here. I don't know if you see this kind of toward the bottom.
Randy says, intermittent fasting worked for a while, but over time benefits faded as my go-to. I still follow the protocol 5 or 7 days a week in cycles. I'm 51 years old, very active, strength training 3 to 4 days a week. Comments. Well, I mean, in general, right? If goal is weight loss and body composition, the leaner you get, the slower things will go and the more likely things will stall out. So that's not going to be exclusive to intermittent fasting. And the leaner you get, the more precise and strategic you have to be and patient in your approach. Right. So like if you're already relatively lean, you have to be more precise and more patient as you go along and be willing to do more fine tuning. So I guess I'm suggesting there's nothing wrong with that. That's somewhat to be expected. And if you hit a plateau, it's just, okay, well, what do I need to do to kind of break through this plateau? And Randy, if you want to give us some more details, we could talk about that. But maybe you're already at a point where you just feel good and you're just kind of in maintenance mode. But yeah, for any weight loss strategy, anything, the leaner you get, the more difficult it becomes and the more precise you have to be and the more patient, right?
Big time.
Yeah. Aleks, Aleks, you did a pretty intense like body composition thing not too long ago. Did you notice that as you got closer and closer to that level of leanness, that it just takes longer, takes more patience, right?
I actually didn't think about it a whole lot. I maybe I'm an interesting case because, well, number one, as regards intermittent fasting, I actually did the reverse of what Randy's talking about. Because Randy, I agree with you. I did intermittent fasting via the Warrior Diet for just about 10 years. I liked it quite a bit, but eventually my goals just changed, and intermittent fasting didn't really fit into the picture for what I wanted to do. But I mean, I still think it's great. But when I did, it was last year, I did the Amazing 12, which is like a 12-week body composition transformation. And for me, it was kind of the reverse, because I had to eat like 6 meals a day, and I was used to eating basically 2. There was like, one around the time that I would train, and then 1 in the evening. And so I was going from that to eating like every 3 hours. So yeah, the food portion of it was difficult from that perspective, because it was like I just had to eat so much more frequently. And
which is funny for you because your stomach is like the pit of the Sarlacc, man. We talk like I eat kind of like a bird. Like it is hard for me, and this will go into one of the questions we have here. It's hard for me. It is I should say it's harder for me to meet consistently a caloric surplus goal than it is a caloric deficit goal.
Yeah. I mean, when I was at this is a common observation I make to myself whenever I'm at your house, but I'm like, I can't believe how little they eat. Like, and they don't, I mean, it's not like you and your wife and kids don't eat anything. Like, you're eating like normal people, but I'm comparing myself to you guys. And I just, like you said, I just have like a bottomless pit for a stomach. And that's not an exaggeration. Like, I don't know what it is, but I just have an appetite that like goes above and beyond what most people do.
And friends, until you've seen it, you don't know what we're talking about. It is an experience to watch how much Aleks can actually eat. All right, keep the comments and questions coming, guys. We'll jam around for maybe another 15 minutes here. I really appreciate the feedback and the comments and questions you guys are sending in. It's really good. Herb says, my favorite Pat Flynn shows are when you have Aleks on. You both vibe so well. Cheers, my friend. We love Aleks here on the Pat Flynn Show. I usually just drag him on last minute. I'm like, yo, I'm about to do a live stream.
Like today?
Yeah. Like, you want to hop on?
Yep.
I don't want to be alone, Aleks.
Please don't make me be alone.
Don't make me be alone. Ray says, Pat, I've been following your strategic meal replacement protocol for years, and it's been such a game changer. Ray, makes me smile to hear it, my brother. It really is, man. It was a game changer in my life. Like I said, it's something I use consistently in my Strong On programming for people who are members. It's something I incorporate frequently with clients to great success. So it's why I keep insisting upon it, because it's so well established in the research, and it's so consistently producing results in my own experience, both in my life and with my clients as well. Does that mean that it's for absolutely everybody? No, of course not. But in the general run, it's a good tool to have in your toolkit. Grant says, I've been doing swings with a 28 kilogram. Glad you're liking that protocol, Grant. If people don't know what that is, check out some of the videos from last week. We've been having a lot of fun with this new swing routine. All right, let's find here's a question that relates to what we were talking about before, Aleks. How do you boost hunger if you're having trouble eating enough, even if what you do eat is protein sufficient and overall nutrient dense? So I'll give you the strategy that I use. I don't, if you just consistently eat more, I mean, you will kind of, train yourself to become hungrier, or to kind of eat with that increased frequency. But here's where shakes can be helpful in another way. So here's this is something I first learned again from my friend Spencer Nadolski, who's got a lot of he's an obesity medicine specialist, but he's also a really jacked dude. And his strategy is this, and it's worked well for me too on when I actually need to get more calories in. And it's using the idea of shakes. And it's this: if you want to lose weight, replace a meal with a shake. If you want to gain weight, add a shake to a meal, right? Because shakes are pretty easy to get down, even if you feel pretty full. So the shake can be a cool hack there, where if you just need to get in some extra calories. And of course, you can use like certain formulas and shakes that really boost calories if you need. So that would be my strategy for you if you're like me and it's just hard to just eat more. And I appreciate that. You can use shakes, but in that opposite approach to help to just pack more in. Mm-hmm. All right. Let's see what we got here. Ray says, great thoughts on periodized eating. So important mentally as well. Yeah, I think that's part of the reason why people have so much success with that. I mean, we're social animals, right? And so much of what we do socially is eating. So just, man, I don't know. Like, if you have a really big goal and like you're going for the figure competition trophy, sure. Like, you just have to make certain sacrifices, certain social sacrifices, go out, get the club soda. But for most people, most of the time, I feel like if you can't incorporate the occasional pizza or burger with your friends and family, I don't know. I feel like I feel like you can definitely do that. You know what I mean? Aleks,
I agree. This is the Agree Cast.
this is the agreement cast. Okay, Aleks, before we wrap up here, you've been kind enough to join us, sir. So why don't you tell us what you got coming down the pipeline and about the whatever you're working on programming wise and where people can keep up with all of your good work.
Right. Well, so number one, I'm going to be revamping a program of mine that I put out a couple years ago called the Crash Course in Rings. And so what it's about is using gymnastics rings to increase your calisthenic strength as well as your kettlebell strength. So I'm going to be renewing the program and adding some more nuances to it based on the stuff that I have learned and experimented with over the last 2 years. So that is coming up very soon. I also have a free class that I'm doing on Zoom tomorrow called Secrets of Strongevity. And it should be a lot of fun. If you want to know about that, you can email me about it. Otherwise, the best way to keep in touch or to keep up to date on everything that I am doing is definitely via my email list. And the way that you can get on it is you can go to alexsalkin.com and sign up from there. So if you feel so inclined, that would be the place to go.
Beautiful. Okay, gentle listeners, if you've enjoyed this, if this has benefited you in any way, please consider liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing, leaving a review on iTunes, Stitcher, or Google Play, wherever you listen. And if you want to keep up with me and all my insane rants, head over to 101kettlebellworkouts.com. You can pick up a big fat course and offensive PDF of 101 of my choicest kettlebell workouts, absolutely free. That'll get you on my email list where I share cool things and ideas and stuff. Aleks, always a pleasure, my friend. Shall we cue out with that beautiful music?
Well, even if I say no, you're going to...
It's a never